Ça va bien? Pleasure to see you all this morning. Écoutez, c'est un plaisir d'être de retour à Hamilton. Vous vous rappellerez, ici à Hamilton, on a fait récemment un investissement important pour faire de l'aluminium, de l'acier vert. Vous savez, c'est dans notre vision d'être, j'allais dire, le fournisseur de choix vert pour les différents secteurs. Et puis certainement, d'être à Hamilton, d'être de retour, ça fait plaisir. Et certainement, la retraite du cabinet, vous l'avez entendu, c'est vraiment autour de la création d'opportunités pour les travailleurs, les travailleuses à travers le pays. Donc, content d'être ici, puis surtout comme ce matin aussi avec McMaster. So, just briefly say, it's good to be back. I must say, Hamilton, you know, we've done something, I think, which is transformational for the city, for the region, which was with the fast car ArcelorMittal. This is part of our strategy. You may have seen, we want to be the green supplier of choice. There's a lot of uncertainty in the world. There's a lot of questions, but obviously Canada stands out with stability, predictability, and now to be the green supplier of choice. It's true in steel, it's true in aluminum. We're working on batteries, as you all know, and certainly microchip. So it's good to be back. And I'd say that the cabinet retreat was all about growth and jobs for Canadians. So happy to entertain your question, and happy to be here with you.
All right. Well, Minister, speaking of predictability and stability, on Rogers-Shaw, I mean, it's been through 2 years of regulatory hurdles now with the court decision. The last thing to go is you making your decision as the minister. So what do you still need to hear to give this deal your okay, and what's the timeline for when we can expect a decision from you?
Well, I'm well aware. I mean, the first thing I'd like to thank the Competition Bureau for the work they did to look at issues around competition. You know that I've expressed concerns. Those are well known. And now what I will be looking at is the decision of the Federal Court of Appeal to understand their reasoning. And then I'll make a decision in due course. But what I want everyone in Canada to know, I've always been working on behalf of Canadians to make sure that we have more competition, more affordability and innovation in the sector. And this is what's going to be guiding my decision as we look at that. As you know, I've already denied the transfer of license from Shaw to Rogers. That's already done. Now what's in front of me, as you will recall, is a transfer of the license from Shaw to Videotron. And that's the decision I will have to make in due course.
So what do you still need to hear on that, though? Because they adjusted things, and that's the way it went through the approval process. There's going to be no appeal of the court decision, as we understand it. So what do you still need to hear from the companies before you can make your final decision?
Well, it's not really about hearing from the company, but I want to understand the reasoning of the Federal Court of Appeal, and then looking at ways, and you will recall at the time, I set a number of expectations that would like to be met, and that's what I'm going to be reflecting on. What are the expectations that I can demand that would ensure competition, that would ensure the fact that would have affordability. But like I said, I'm very much in the mind of looking at the decision and rendering a decision in due course, making sure that we have that competition and affordability that Canadians want.
Minister, I want to ask about a couple of industrial sites. LG is pulling out of one of their U.S. battery plants with GM because of economic uncertainty. Have you received any assurances, any specific assurances from LG that the plant in Windsor will go ahead?
Well, listen, as you know me by now, I speak to all the CEOs basically in the space. And we have a number of discussions going. I was just in Korea recently. I've been speaking with colleagues around the world, whether it's in Europe, in Detroit, in Japan. I think Canada remains one of the most attractive places. Don't take it from me, but remember the words of the Group CEO of Volkswagen that said Canada is the logical choice when you're looking at the battery plant. The reason and I keep saying it, the first thing is talent. I mean, and we're blessed by talent. We're still a very big magnet for talent who wants to come to Canada. The second one is the ecosystems. You know, we've built over time very strong resilient ecosystems. I keep saying to people around the world, after China and Germany, the Detroit-Windsor corridor is the third largest in the world. The third thing is critical minerals and the proximity to plant assembly lines and obviously the deposit of critical minerals. The fourth is renewable energy, because I think, and I've said that around the world, we're going to be moving from pure electric to a green vehicle. I think that's what consumer wants. That's what I would say pension funds would want. That's what the banks will want from these providers. And lastly, I would say is access to market. So competitiveness is a number of things. We know that the IRA has been a big catalyst for a number of investments in North America. We see a realignment of supply chain, which is favoring Canada, and at the same time, more emphasis on resiliency. And my discussions with leaders around the world is that if you want to talk about resiliency in North America, Canada needs to be part of the equation, because we have the critical minerals to power the economy of the 21st century, whether it's the electric vehicle or the semiconductor.
So just, can you please explicitly clarify, Windsor is still happening? And then I just want to ask you, Google's DeepMind is shutting down its Edmonton facility. They announced this yesterday, or told employees yesterday. It employs many of the top researchers at AMI, which is one of the AI institutes in your pan-Canadian AI strategy. Are you concerned about what that's going to do to the AI ecosystem in Edmonton?
Well, the first thing, I'm always thinking about the professionals who work there, because like I say, one of our greatest strengths in AI and quantum and cybersecurity is the people. But the good news, I would say, is that I think there would be opportunities for them in continuing to contribute their talent to grow the ecosystem. Just recently, you'll recall, Nokia is investing almost close to $1 billion in different phases in Ottawa. I was just with the Prime Minister. You will remember Xanadu, a company which is, in the quantum space. Actually, the only company in the world which is using a quantum computer for battery chemistry. And with the investment we announced with the Prime Minister, we're moving from, our investment of about $40 million is generating a project of close to $180 million and 500 jobs at term. So my sense is we've seen movements in the market. To be honest, we've seen, the tech sector moving. But the good news is that people realize that the place to be now is no longer just Silicon Valley, but I would say Canada, Toronto, Montreal, and Edmonton are magnets for talent when it comes to the tech sector. And I think it's a good thing. So on one end, obviously, I'm thinking about the families who had that news. On the other hand, I can tell you there's people calling me because they want to come to invest in Canada. So hopefully things will balance out. But I'm very bullish when it comes to the sector.
Hi, Minister. Did Cabinet discuss the Rogers-Shaw merger? And if so, what can you tell us about those discussions?
Well, as you know, Cabinet discussions are confidential. But what I say, it remains. Like I said, I want to thank the Competition Bureau for the work. I've expressed concerns about that merger. That's why I've set very high expectations to make sure that in whatever scenario that may be, that people well understand that my focus is about affordability and competition, and I will be making a decision in due course. The application in front of me, just to be clear for Canadians watching at home, it's no longer from Shaw to Rogers, but as far as the piece that is relevant for my department is the proposed transfer of license from Shaw to Videotron, because I've already said no to Shaw Rogers, and I think that's well understood by Canadians. So we'll be looking at that in due course, but in all fairness, I want to look at what are the findings of the Federal Court of Appeal before we consider any decision.
One more question on this, Minister. The CRTC is doing an investigation prompted by TechSavvy. Will you wait for that to be over before you make your decision? Does that factor into your timeline? And also quickly, just how satisfied are you that wireless and data rates might actually go down because of this and not up with the exit of a player from this field? Well,
listen, that's what I mean, you know me by now. My concern, and I've been using all the tools I have in the toolbox to fight for Canadians for better price and having strong competition in Canada. We'll be looking at the decision, like I said, the Federal Court of Appeal just happened yesterday. I'm a lawyer. I want to look at these things and understand their reasoning, why they came to that conclusion with respect to competition. and I'll have a separate decision. But I want Canadians to know, and probably the CEOs of the companies watching, they know that I've expressed concerns. And as I'm looking at that application in front of me, my mindset is really how can we foster competition and affordability in the country.
The CRTC investigation at that point?
Well, listen, I'm aware of that. As you know, the CRTC already rendered their decision with respect to the Shaw-Rogers merger. And that's why, like I said, we'll be looking at the Federal Court of Appeal and certainly looking at all the evidence and then making a decision in due course. Merci tout le monde. Merci. C'est juste que comme je n'ai pas répondu à aucune question en français.
C'est gentil. Je veux juste entendre au sujet de la clause non-obstant. M. Legault en a parlé encore. Il insiste là-dessus. Vous en pensez quoi, vous, en tant que ministre du Québec?
Ben, écoutez, je me suis déjà exprimé, le premier ministre s'est déjà exprimé sur la question. Je pense, vous savez, c'est pas une question comme ministre, mais je vous parle comme avocat. Moi, quand j'ai étudié le droit en 1992, à l'époque, vous savez, je pense que c'était pas envisagé, du moins à l'époque, quand moi j'ai étudié le droit, cette utilisation péremptoire de cette clause-là. Je pense que ça demande un débat de société là-dessus, à savoir comment cette clause-là peut être utilisée dans le respect des droits de tous et chacun. Et je dirais souvent que la Charte des droits et libertés a bien servi les Québécois et le Québec depuis plusieurs décennies. Alors, dans ce contexte-là, moi, je regarde ça plus en me disant il y a un débat à avoir, à savoir comment on veut que ça se passe chez nous sur cette question-là. Et comme je vous dis, comme avocat, je regarde ça puis je me dis il y a quand même une question à se poser là qui éventuellement devra être probablement tranchée par les tribunaux.
Et vos commettants se sentent comment par rapport à ça? Vous êtes près du public, vous
je
parlez
vous
beaucoup
dirais
aux gens, mais est-ce que ça risque de mettre peut-être votre parti en porte-à-faux avec une grande partie de l'électorat?
C'est pas une affaire politique, moi, je vous dirais, Raymond. C'est plus un enjeu, je pense, de société. Les gens chez nous, vous savez, Raymond, sont pas mal plus préoccupés par l'inflation, par la création d'emplois, puis s'assurer qu'on soit là pour créer des opportunités. Vous savez, dans notre coin, on parle des batteries. Je pense qu'on parle plus des batteries que de la clause non-obstant dans mon coin, je vous dirais, parce qu'il y a des investissements records qui s'en viennent, puis le Québec rentre par la grande porte dans le secteur automobile. Si vous me demandiez si j'avais à prendre un pari, je vous dirais que les gens chez nous sont pas mal plus intéressés par voir les emplois qui s'en viennent dans le domaine qui vont générer sur des décennies de l'activité économique dans notre coin. Merci.
Bonjour tout le monde. Good afternoon. I understand some of you are interested to talk to Jean-Yves and me. That's very reassuring for us. As all of you saw this morning, the Prime Minister confirmed an invitation that was sent to fellow First Ministers early this morning. I had a number of conversations with some premiers last night, as did the Prime Minister. We're looking forward to seeing them in Ottawa on the 7th of February for a working meeting. This will be a detailed conversation where the Government of Canada will put before the premiers what we think are detailed and significant proposals that answer so many of the common priorities that provinces and territories have been discussing with our government over the last number of months. And obviously, the leadership on our side has been with my colleague, the Minister of Health, and his provincial and territorial counterparts. So, nous avons beaucoup hâte à la réunion le 7 février. C'est une réunion de travail à Ottawa. Le premier ministre a acheminé ce matin une invitation au premier ministre des provinces et des territoires. Moi-même, hier soir, j'ai parlé à quelques premiers ministres, comme M. Trudeau a parlé, par exemple, à M. Legault, entre autres, pour leur parler de l'invitation qui s'en venait aujourd'hui. Comme j'ai dit, c'est une réunion de travail. Il n'y aura pas d'entente signée à cette réunion-là. C'est une occasion pour nous de mettre devant les premiers ministres des propositions détaillées que je pense vont avancer d'une façon concrète et on espère vite le bon travail qui a été fait à date et nous amener à une entente avec les provinces et les territoires, à des ententes, je devrais dire, qui vont bénéficier à tous les Canadiens, les patients qui attendent des services de haute qualité accessibles du système de soins de santé publique, comme ceux et celles qui travaillent dans ce système, comme on sait, qui est sous pression extraordinaire. Alors, peut-être, vous avez, Jean-Yves, as-tu quelque chose à ajouter ou on va aux questions?
No, I don't have much to say except that.
So good, or?
Yeah, you were as usual, and as we all know. But more importantly, perhaps, this is obviously from a health minister's perspective, very good news because it's going to build on the hard work that my colleagues, health ministers, have done over the last year, working with me and my team to make sure we would be making further progress in supporting their difficult work in provinces and territories. Donc, de ma part, comme ministre de la Santé, c'est une étape vraiment importante. J'en suis très heureux. On savait qu'on allait arriver éventuellement là, au niveau des premiers ministres des provinces et des territoires et de M. Trudeau. Alors, on va être là le 7 février, évidemment, pour profiter, faire le point sur les travaux importants qu'on a fait depuis un an entre ministres de la Santé à l'échelle du pays. Faire en sorte aussi qu'on puisse présenter le plan, l'offre du gouvernement canadien pour continuer d'appuyer les provinces et les territoires et faire le point sur ce qu'on veut faire par la suite.
Mais, Messieurs Leblanc et Duclos, j'ai pas entendu le mot condition ce matin. Est-ce que ce mot-là a été retiré du vocabulaire? Mais il y a plusieurs objectifs qui ont été nommés. Si ces objectifs-là ne sont pas atteints, est-ce qu'il va y avoir des mécanismes pour ne pas financer les provinces qui n'atteignent pas vos objectifs, que ce soit en santé mentale ou bien pour l'accès aux médecins de famille ou aux infirmières?
Bien, deux choses là-dessus. La première, c'est qu'on a toujours parlé, et vous avez entendu aussi les ministres de la Santé des provinces et des territoires, de résultats partagés, de résultats que nous savons être importants pour tous les Canadiens, travailleurs et patients à l'échelle du pays. Et la deuxième chose, c'est qu'on a entendu aussi que le gouvernement canadien, malgré l'investissement déjà important que l'on fait en appui aux provinces et aux territoires. Et malgré la hausse de cet investissement en mars prochain, dans quelques semaines à peine, de 10 du transfert canadien en santé, bien, on va investir encore davantage en respectant les conditions dans lesquelles les provinces et les territoires travaillent à leur échelle, mais en reconnaissant que ce sont des défis nationaux. Donc, on a déjà mis clairement sur la table ces résultats partagés auxquels on s'attend, c'est-à-dire un meilleur accès à la médecine familiale, c'est-à-dire réduire les retards en matière de chirurgie et de diagnostic, appuyer nos travailleurs de santé qui en ont beaucoup besoin, augmenter l'accès aux soins de santé mentale et moderniser notre système de données pour que nos soins de santé soient de meilleure qualité et qu'on sauve davantage de vies lorsque vient le temps de procéder du travail clinique.
Madeleine, si vous me permettez, Madeleine, juste pour ajouter, Jean-Yves a bien expliqué, je pense, un consensus important qui existe avec les provinces et les territoires et le gouvernement fédéral. Nous pensons que la réunion va être très constructive. Nous ne voyons pas du tout un scénario où il y a des désaccords fondamentaux quant aux priorités communes. Moi, mes conversations me donnent énormément d'espoir que les premiers ministres qui ont la responsabilité dans les provinces et les territoires de gérer leur système de soins de santé publique sont aussi inquiets que nous et que les Canadiens quant à l'état actuel. Et pourquoi ne pas travailler ensemble d'une façon ouverte, visible pour les Canadiens? Et c'est pourquoi j'ai tellement d'espoir qu'à une semaine du Saint-Valentin, ça va être une bonne réunion à Ottawa.
The Prime Minister said this morning that there will be bilateral deals made with the provinces as well as some sort of joint deal. Can you explain the difference between what might go in a bilateral deal and what, like sort of one-on-one, and what would be sort of in a grander deal with all of the provinces at the same time?
Well, our most important relationship at this point is to work with provinces and territories in a respectful manner, and that's exactly what we've done over the last few months. I've done that, and I'm very grateful for that opportunity with ministers of health across Canada. It's been exceptional in terms of the quality of the collaboration, and we know, and I'm quite certain that it's going to continue at the health ministers level, and we know it's going to be good also at the premiers, the first ministers level. So in respect for the work that we need to do with them, in collaboration with them, we'll obviously maintain an appropriate degree of discretion on as to how exactly that support will be provided to them.
Well, just to follow up on that, Minister, I think we're just trying to understand. So the Prime Minister has confirmed that you're looking at providing some stable funding nationally on an ongoing basis and bilateral deals with cooperation on shared priorities. But the thing that he seems to suggest is the data collection and sharing that you've been talking about to establish national baselines seems to be, at least you're suggesting, a common thing. So do you bake that into the joint national funding? Is that through a transfer? Or is that only something that comes via bilateral deals, which maybe provinces may not opt into?
Well, three things.
Clarify that. That's an important point.
That's a fair question. I'll try to do that. There are three things that have been already quite well known. The first one is an increase in the CHT, the Canada Health Transfer. We know it's already going to increase by 10% in March. We know it increased by 5% last March. And we've already said, the Prime Minister said that it will increase further. The second thing, he spoke to the value of bilateral agreements on those shared priorities that I just highlighted. And it was again clear this morning, these are going to be focused on shared results. Again, access to family medicine, reducing backlogs in surgeries and diagnostics, supporting our healthcare workers through better retention, better recruitment, and better recognition of their credentials if they are trained internationally, better access to mental health care, and a more modern health data system that will help save lives by connecting workers better together and getting access to people to their electronic medical records. And the third thing that we have also said is that we need to share data better between provinces and territories and the federal government so we can make those data better accessible to all of those experts, doctors, nurses, medical specialists, researchers across Canada who know that they need those data to understand the value of, say, vaccines and treatments and drugs and technologies, to be able to better make teams of professionals work better together, remuneration practices, how we make team-based primary care more accessible in Canada. So all of that data is central to our work together, but also very important to lots of other people across Canada.
If I can, Tonda, just the question with respect to the bilateral agreements, I had a conversation with the Premier of your province, Newfoundland and Labrador, last night. He's very enthusiastic about the idea of having flexible agreements as between the provinces and territories. Some might even call them asymmetrical agreements. But by very definition, if the provinces can come to the Government of Canada and say, Newfoundland and Labrador, these are our priorities, and I think we'll all be reassured that many, if not all of those, are the same priorities that we ran on in the last election or that Jean-Yves has elaborated with his colleagues, the bilateral agreements will offer the flexibility to respond to the specific needs of each jurisdiction. And the Premier of Newfoundland and Labrador said to me that he has a plan for his province that may be different than the Premier of Ontario, but that's why those conversations, there'll be so many common elements. There may be some differences around geography, virtual care, and other items. So we're confident that that's the best mechanism to address those unique needs.
Ministers, Marika Walsh with the Globe and Mail. I just am a bit confused on where your government now stands on private role in healthcare. In the election campaign a year and a half ago, when Aaron O'Toole was talking about innovation in the healthcare system and the role of the private sector, your party slammed it quite strongly and bounced back in the polls on that argument. Now the Prime Minister's calling it healthcare innovation when Doug Ford is talking about adding in more private delivery paid through by the public purse. So can you clarify which parts of private delivery you do support and which parts you don't?
Well, the privatization debate centers on the role and responsibility of the federal government. And that responsibility comes in large part through the Canada Health Act. And if we look at the Canada Health Act, there are basically two basic things. The first one is public funding. The second one is equitable access to health care services across Canada. Public funding means that people should not have to pay with their credit card when they need medical services. That's been agreed, I think, by everyone that we've heard across Canada. Equitable access means that whatever patients we may be, however complex our case may be, wherever we may be from, in whatever community we may live in, we have the right to access which is as equitable and as accessible as access by others. And that's why that conversation is so important, that whatever progress, reforms we may want to put into place in different provinces and territories, that is respectful of both public funding and equitable access for everyone in this country.
So you're not clarifying clarifying, though, how much more private delivery you're open to. It appears that you're much more warm to it now than you were a year and a half ago.
We still have the same responsibility now as we had a year or two or in 1984 when the Canada Health Act was passed in Parliament. So it's the same responsibility. Obviously, in 2023, there are concerns and perhaps loopholes, and I'll come to that in a moment, that were not so present in the early 1980s. So I'm going to have this conversation very clearly, very openly, and very respectfully with my colleagues, health ministers, over the next weeks and months, because we do hear some of those concerns. Some of them are maybe legitimate. We just need to understand them well and then to have a frank and respectful conversation on them.
Ouais, bonjour, M. Duclos, M. LeBlanc. M. Duclos, question peut-être un peu plus philosophique. Est-ce que vous croyez que l'accord que vous souhaitez conclure avec les provinces va permettre de faire entrer finalement les systèmes de soins de santé dans la modernité? Je m'explique. On ne partage pas beaucoup les données, on en fait peu. Est-ce que ça pourrait être un jour l'objectif du gouvernement de faire entrer nos systèmes de santé dans la modernité pour ce qui est du partage de données, la collecte de données, etc.?
Il y a trois raisons pour lesquelles ça va être effectivement le cas. La première, c'est que la technologie existe déjà. La deuxième, c'est qu'on est en retard par rapport à d'autres pays et qu'on veut donc suivre leur exemple. La troisième, c'est que les données en santé, je dirais, la difficulté d'accéder à des données en santé mène à des pertes de vie et à des pertes considérables d'argent. Il y a des gens qui se retrouvent à l'urgence tous les jours et qui n'ont pas les soins appropriés et rapides parce que l'infirmier, l'infirmière ou le médecin qui accueille cette personne n'a pas accès à son dossier de vaccination, quels médicaments cette personne peut prendre, des allergies qu'elle peut avoir, son dossier médical, l'histoire de ses conditions de traitement. Et donc, ça crée beaucoup de stress sur le personnel médical, mais aussi une qualité de soins de santé, une sécurité de soins de santé qui, malheureusement, ne sont pas à la hauteur. Mais la bonne nouvelle, ayant dit ça, c'est que, étant donné toute la richesse d'innovation et de technologie au Canada, on va pouvoir faire, je crois, assez rapidement des progrès majeurs qui vont augmenter non seulement ce qu'on appelle l'efficacité du système, mais surtout la qualité et la sécurité des soins pour ceux qui ont besoin de soins de santé.
Rapidement, vous souhaitez une entente sur 10 ans?
Comme on a dit, on va avoir ces conversations avec les provinces et les territoires. Le premier ministre l'a répété encore ce matin. Il y a des enjeux de court terme pour lesquels les provinces et les territoires ont déjà amplement de ressources avec les investissements qu'on a faits pour les appuyer au cours des derniers mois et des dernières années, certainement. Le transfert va augmenter de 10 en mars, il va augmenter de 5 en mars dernier. Et en plus de ça, on va ajouter du financement qui va être du financement beaucoup de long terme parce qu'on ne se le cachera pas. On sait que la COVID-19 a énormément causé de dommages pour nos travailleurs et nos patients. Il y a énormément de retard en chirurgie, en diagnostic, un cancer, entre autres. Il y a des travailleurs qui ont quitté en grand nombre, qui sont fatigués, qui malheureusement pensent même à prendre leur retraite dans les prochains mois. Et donc, on a beaucoup de réparations à faire, mais de préparation aussi pour le futur, parce que notre système de santé, si on souhaite qu'il continue à être public, financement public et accessible, il faut pouvoir investir pour le préparer pour l'avenir.
Joël Denis, Joël Denis, juste pour répondre à ça, plusieurs premiers ministres m'ont dit, et je sais que M. Trudeau a partagé ça avec Jean-Yves et moi, les premiers ministres, y compris M. Legault, on l'a vu à plusieurs reprises, M. Legault, faire le point que des investissements à long terme sont, pour les provinces et les territoires, très importants parce que ça leur permet de faire exactement ce que Jean-Yves a décrit. Alors, nous avons bien entendu M. Legault et d'autres premiers ministres. Et c'est pourquoi nous acceptons que l'idée d'une entente, par exemple, juste pour 5 ans, n'est pas aussi intéressante que des investissements à plus longue durée. Mais c'est exactement la discussion que nous avons tellement hâte à avoir le 7 février à Ottawa. Et j'espère que vous allez être là.
Absolument. Merci.
You have made it clear today, Minister LeBlanc, the Prime Minister, that you don't expect to come out of this meeting with a signed deal. But is there not... I just wonder if you could sort of qualify the sense of urgency, because surely you intend to do it before the budget is passed. Like, how long do you think Canadians are going to have to wait for a final answer on this?
Well, let us be very clear again. No, funding is there. It's not about money. No, most provinces and territories are in surplus, and it's been like this also last year. We have invested, we have paid for, it's not me, it's Canadians have paid through the federal government 80% of the pandemic investments. The Canada Health Transfer will increase from $45 to $49 billion in just a few weeks from now. We've sent additional support of $2 billion just a few weeks ago to help ease the hospital crisis. So federal money has been abundant and will need to be increasing not only in the short term but in the longer term. What we need to continue to do with provinces and territories, and that leadership comes from the provincial health ministers. These provincial health ministers not only have a difficult job to do, but they are outstanding. They know what they want to do. Their shared priorities over the last year are very revealing. They are strong, they are anchored in reality, and they are ambitious. So we look forward to building on that at the next meeting at the First Minister's level, so that thereafter we can do it as quickly as possible, but in the right way too, in respectful of the different roles that we play, but also acknowledging the same responsibility that we have, which is to serve the same people with the same dollars coming from the same pockets and with the same objectives.
Catherine, just on the issue of the timing of the budget, premiers have said exactly the same thing to us. They're in the process of preparing their budgets now. They obviously want to know what the long-term fiscal position is with respect to this important element for Canadians, the healthcare system. So I said it last summer, our hope very much is after the meeting on the 7th of February to quickly conclude these agreements that we think will be in the interest of improving the public healthcare system for the long term. And then everybody is in the budget process. You said agreements before the budget's passed. We would hope to have an agreement before the budget's even tabled.
En français, M. LeBlanc, combien de temps il vous reste là, si une semaine de la Saint-Valentin, la magie n'opère pas pour avoir une entente, pour vous enlacer d'ici le budget?
Moi, je suis pas pessimiste comme vous. Il y a beaucoup de magie la semaine avant le Saint-Valentin. Au moins, moi, je le constate. Et comme Jean-Yves a dit, et le premier ministre l'a constaté aussi, il y a énormément en commun déjà. La volonté des premiers ministres à qui moi j'ai parlé au fil des derniers jours, comme M. Trudeau avec M. Legault hier soir, nous fait penser que dans les jours et les semaines qui vont suivre le 7 février, on espère, et ça prendra beaucoup de bonne volonté qu'on constate est là, et beaucoup de travail que Jean-Yves et moi et tout le monde sommes tous prêts à faire. On va arriver à des ententes qui peuvent ensuite être entamées dans les documents budgétaires aussi importants pour nous au fédéral que pour les provinces qui nous ont parlé de l'urgence, eux aussi, de préparer des budgets au cours des prochains mois. Alors moi, je ne suis pas pessimiste du tout. Bonne journée. Merci.
Merci.